Welcome to The Standard. From Vancouver, I'm Randall Mark. Later on in the show, successful Canadian actor Jolie Collins talks with Shannon Nelson. First off in focus, the leader of the Green Party of Canada. The Green Party of Canada has steadily gained support and the all-important vote in the last couple of federal elections. Do they actually stand a chance of electing a member to Parliament, or are they just dividing the left and creating a bright future for Stephen Harper and the Conservatives? Prior to becoming the leader of the Green Party of Canada, Elizabeth May was the director of the Sierra Club. An all-outspoken Anglican, she will be running in the same Nova Scotia riding as Defence Minister Peter MacKay. Elizabeth May joins me from the Metropolitan Hotel in downtown Vancouver. Thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Thanks, Randall. Happy to be here.
That's great. Well, let's just start off the bat, right off the bat here. You've come under some heat recently for a press release you offered on the Manley Report, and where you said forces, quote, from a Christian crusader heritage will continue to fuel an insurgency that has been framed as a jihad. You've written in the National Post trying to defend yourself. Why do you think that statement framed in that way was problematic?
Well, partly because it was deliberately misunderstood and misrepresented, but honestly, we left ourselves open to that by thinking that because we understood our policy so well based on Vision Green, which is on our website, which explains our Afghanistan position in a great deal more detail. You know, when you know an issue so well, you assume others know what you're talking about. And but
is it the language of the crusade, Christian crusade, like the Canadian troops are now Christian crusaders? Is
no,
that the problem?
What the point was, and it was clearer in the press release and also much clearer in Vision Green, is that the language that the Taliban use and that Islamic extremist groups use to recruit to their cause is around a propaganda that says that this is a clash of civilizations or religions, that this is Christian West versus Islam. We know that that's not the case. We know that the NATO forces with the UN sanction are not there in any kind of religious crusade. But when the forces that are taking on the Taliban come from primarily countries of a Christian tradition, that leads to being able to fuel that propaganda, to run that lie, and recruit extremists to the terrorist cause.
So what's your answer to that? I mean,
our answer is to have a more diverse fighting force, a more diverse peacekeeping effort that would be not just through NATO, but through the United Nations, where we have the access to other nations with a different tradition and different heritage, such as Malaysia, for example, which has a larger Islamic population. If we were in southern Afghanistan, in the Kandahar region, doing things differently, if we were, for instance, not eradicating the poppy crops of farmers, but ensuring that they were legalized and that the poppies were used for medicine, that would help stabilize the region, help local farmers. And another, of course, way that they recruit terrorists and recruit people into the Taliban is that the NATO forces are eradicating their poppy crops. If on top of that the forces were multinational, multiracial, and actually multi-religious, that would put the lie to the idea that this was in any way a clash of civilizations.
Now, there's going to be an extension of the troops into beyond the 2009 date. Are you in support of that? And if so, at a party that is anti-war, how can you be in favor of extending a military mission?
We don't think that the issue is properly framed about whether Canadians leave in 2009 or Canadians leave in 2011. If other forces from other NATO countries are put in the place of Canadian troops and continue in a mission that is not winnable militarily, that puts those young lives at unnecessary risk, and which operates in a way which is counterproductive, then it's not a good mission whether we're in it till 2009 and another takes over, or we're in it till 2011 and then others take over.
You want to pull them out now?
We want to change the mission. We want to transform it from a NATO mission to a United Nations mission. We think it's time to face the facts, which the Manley Report sets out, that the mission is largely dysfunctional, that the objectives are not clear, that under U.S. high command, our troops are at increasing danger and risk in southern Afghanistan, and in other words, the military solution by itself isn't working. We are there to help the people of Afghanistan develop peace and security and institutions that work. That mission can't end in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years. That's a longer-term effort if we're serious about it, and it should be undertaken within the ambit of the United Nations so that it cannot be described and cannot be distorted and, in fact, cannot be, in effect, an aspect of the U.S. Bush-led war against terror. And when Stephen Harper described our effort as being part of the war against terror, terrorism, not only did he more endanger Canadian lives, he shifted the mission 180 degrees, and that's where we need to get back on track to being a mission that's about delivering peace and security. You're right. Part of it may involve shooting at people, but our primary goal here is to allow the people of Afghanistan to live in peace and security.
Are one of the ways that you're trying to challenge that conservative foreign affairs approach is, are you going head-to-head with Peter MacKay from the Conservative government in the riding in Nova Scotia? Do you think you stand a chance of beating him? He won by a landslide last time.
Actually, he didn't win by a landslide. 60% of the voters in that riding voted for other candidates. So unlike his father, I mean, it's true that some people outside of Nova Scotia think that Central Nova is sort of a family heirloom that MacKay's hand down from generation to generation, and sometimes even lend out. It was in Central Nova that Brian Mulroney was first elected to Parliament in a by-election, and then Elmer MacKay came back in and took it over again. Those days are over. Elmer MacKay used to win by 60% of the vote. In the last election, Peter MacKay faced a substantial challenge from the NDP and in fact won with kind of a squeaker with 40% of the vote. I have a good chance there. I'm making a case to the voters of Central Nova that after 10 years with Peter MacKay as their MP, people are not better off, unemployment rates are higher, and that in his role as a member of the Harper cabinet, the usual calculus that when you have a federal minister who's in a cabinet, you can deliver some good news for the people in your riding and in your region. That's no longer the case because Stephen Harper is one-man rule, and being in his cabinet is sort of an ornamental position. It doesn't actually deliver results on the ground, and it hasn't protected Nova Scotia, for instance, from the Harper government violating the terms of the contract with Nova Scotia that was known as the Atlantic Accord.
Well, you may stand a chance because you've got to deal with the Liberals not to run a Liberal in that riding, which is very interesting. After this break, I'm going to talk to Elizabeth May about issues of religion and spirituality and how they influence her right after this break.